I'm Ella Garenbeck from MUNITY Online, and I'm here with Mr. Daniel Feakes and Scott Cairns from the OPCW. So I'm just wondering if you two gentlemen could give a brief introduction to what your role is within the organization.
Okay. My name, like I said, is Daniel Feakes. I'm a strategy and policy advisor in the OPCW, so I take a kind of more strategic look at some of the issues that the OPCW is covering, and also in a kind of a longer term. So we have people who work very much day-to-day operational issues, but I'm working and looking at issues which might affect us in sort of the medium to longer term, so kind of 5 years, and also looking at issues that cut across the different units that we have within the OPCW working on specific issues.
And you?
My name is Scott Cairns, and I'm an inspection team leader. And I primarily do most of the operational work. So what is born from our strategy and what's born of the decisions of the executive councils, we implement that on the ground.
Mm-hmm. And Scott, you just got back from a trip to Syria, is that correct? I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about what that was like, what that experience, what you did there and what you felt and how it was to be on the ground.
Well, it's always good to be on the ground. Mm-hmm. You seem to feel that you're affecting things a little bit more directly. And right now we're trying to ensure the movement of the chemicals, including chemical weapons, out of Syria onto national ships for future destruction. So it's a combination of frustration, boredom, and very quick action. And it's always a pleasure to be there. I have a very good team when I'm there to help me do the work. And it's always a pleasure to be back in the country of Syria, despite being in a very tragic war. It's a wonderful place. And I think ultimately when we do destroy these weapons, when we do move them out of the country, and that we do find ourselves in a bit more of a stable situation, I think we'll be able to do a little bit more effective work in that country.
Mm-hmm. And Daniel, you talked about how diplomacy is really all about people. It's sometimes easy to get lost in this abstract bureaucratic process, but it's really it's about the people on the ground. So I'm wondering, how do you ensure that what you do talk about in this bureaucratic process does reach the ground? How do you affect change?
It's sometimes difficult because, we have, as Scott just referred to, we have an executive council, which is kind of like our equivalent of the Security Council, and they are the ones that make the decisions, they set the policies for us. And that can often be done, as I kind of alluded to, in a kind of an abstract sense. And when I studied, I read the textbooks, you hear about, all these different theories, negotiation theory. But then, when you get there, and when you're even sitting in something like the Executive Council, you realise that things really work on, person-to-person contacts, and people meeting over coffee or over dinner or over lunch or something like that. That's how kind of things are really, really done. And things that are done in the negotiation room, we have an example with the Chemical Weapons Convention itself. It's a very detailed treaty, but it's nowhere near detailed enough to actually do the stuff that Scott has been talking about. You need operating procedures, you need guidelines, to go into dangerous environments, for example. Those aren't in the treaty. So the treaty is all well and good, but you need a lot more after the treaty has been negotiated to actually turn that treaty text into stuff that can actually function and help people on the ground. So I think that that's a good example, is how you turn a treaty text negotiated by diplomats into something operational.
And so the OPCW just won the Nobel Prize for extensive efforts to eliminate chemical weapons, which is, of course, an incredible honor. I'm wondering, what are your hopes for the future of OPCW, and how do you hope to continue those extensive efforts?
One thing is we're approaching, as I said, 82% of chemical weapons that have been declared to us have been destroyed. As we said inside the room, there are still some states that have yet to join, and we keep on encouraging those states to join. So there could be further chemical weapons that need to be declared. But we're still approaching when all of the declared chemical weapons will be destroyed. So we now need to think about the future and what we do. And one of the important things is to make sure that the weapons don't re-emerge. Of course, weapons don't re-emerge by themselves. That again goes back to the human factor. People take decisions to use these weapons, whether in governments or terrorist organisations or individuals. So we need to focus very much on preventing chemical weapons kind of coming back in the future. And we do that in lots of different ways, working with the chemical industry, working with the scientific community, working with civil society, helping countries build up their domestic kind of structures, their regulations, their criminal infrastructure, their customs authorities. So in lots of different ways, that's really going to be the focus of what we do into the future, is helping countries to keep control of the kind of chemistry that's on their territory, whether it's facilities or science, and also making sure that people that work in that area use science responsibly.
And how do you keep this trust? Because you talk about this relationship that's really important between you and a country. How do you build and maintain the trust between the two of you so you can work together effectively?
It's a constant dialogue. I mean, we are constantly working with our member states. And obviously people themselves will be changing. On our side, we don't stay at the OPCW forever. And on the side of our governments, they don't stay there forever. There's a turnover. So we're constantly kind of reaching out to people, trying to explain, the kind of the benefits of being in the convention, for example, but also providing them with the tools, the materials, and the things that they need to do their job effectively. But it's very much not so much these days us having to persuade them to join, because as I said, most have joined. But it's about how to implement the treaty, because joining a treaty is only really the beginning. Once you join, you need to then start implementing it. So it's trust built on dialogue, cooperation. Our decision making is really all done by consensus. So it's we try and keep things as cooperative as possible. As Scott said earlier, it's a voluntary treaty. States voluntarily decide to join. So we assume that they're joining. They're giving up their weapons. They're opening up their industry. For all of the right reasons. So that step has already been taken.
So moving on to sort of talk about this conference and what this conference means. Is there any advice you have for the delegates who represent the OPCW at the conference this week?
Well, one of them was just asking me that very question. So I mean, one of the things I said to him was, and Scott made lots of reference to this in his talk just now, is that we're a technical organisation. We keep saying this to people. We're a technical organisation. We're very much based on facts, finding facts, confirming information, verifying declarations that we receive. Very much, we try and, as much as we can, kind of keep away from the bigger political issues. And Syria is a good example of that at the moment. We have a technical job to do in Syria. We're doing that job with, all the kind of due diligence and the robustness that we can. And, we have all the equipment and things that we need to do that. Try and be very, very technical. And that's, I think, an important thing, because lots of people here won't be technical people. Lots of our member states will send people, the ambassadors and the delegates to the OPCW are not technical people in the main. So you need to have people who understand technical issues but can kind of synthesize those into a statement or into a decision or something like that. And I think that's important. They have enough awareness of technical issues without actually being a chemist or a biologist or anything themselves. I don't know if Scott has anything to...
No, I think being firmly rooted in the technical, very specific role that we play, not trying to go outside that, is really one of our strengths. If we start to add on things that we think are important, but are not truly dedicated to our main goal, it's really only harming ourselves. So, very succinctly put it, we stick to our main activity, which we're very good at, and that instills a lot of trust with the member states and other organizations. Is that we are very impartial. We do the work that we need to do and not try to exceed our mandate.
All right. And finally, what skills are the delegates that's developing throughout the week that you regularly use in your work?
Communication and human interaction. Again, we have our very specific scientific or technical skills, which you either have or you don't. But it's truly about the human interaction that you have with people. It's the eloquence and the wherewithal to say things or not to say them. So a significant amount of tact, a significant amount of personal responsibility, and social awareness. So a lot of things that are very useful in working in international organizations that are very multicultural are exactly the ones that you need to work in any sort of diplomatic circle. So the first thing that I really insist that people have is a sense of humanity, a sense of humor, and the ability to communicate both of those.
It's very much about working. People will be doing that this weekend. You have people from, I think, 90 odd different countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, it's very much about that, working together with people from different countries, different cultures. So, that whole ability to kind of cross boundaries, and, we have that in OPCW. We have the mix of nationalities, then plus also different technical and, professional backgrounds. So, you really need people, like Scott said, who communicate effectively, who don't get too bogged down in detail, or don't become too technical, or, the other side, too abstract and too political. You need to be able to cross those boundaries, and like Scott said, communicate effectively. I think that's the real key.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you so much for